Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're doing a total forensic autopsy on the financial engineering that literally brought down a global sporting giant. We're basing this on Jan Morrow's brilliantly comprehensive book, Theater of Debts, and we're going to break down exactly how one of the richest, most successful institutions in the history of sports systematically dismantled itself.
We have to start by looking at two starkly different realities. It's night and day. Back in 2005, Manchester United was this pristine, debt-free asset. They were a trouble-winning cash machine just dominating world football. Now, contrast that with the reality of 2026. You're looking at a struggling shell of a club carrying over £1.2 billion in debt, stuck in the bottom half of the league, and dealing with constant, furious protests from their own fans. So the central mystery of our autopsy today is simply this. How exactly did the richest club in the world mathematically engineer its own downfall? The standard sports answers usually point to hiring the wrong managers or buying the wrong players. But as Morrow's analysis proves, the real story here, it isn't about footballing accidents at all. It's entirely about money, corporate structure, and ultimately who controlled the purse strings.
Part 1. The weapon, or what we're calling the extraction engine.
Our story actually begins way off the pitch, right inside the boardroom in 2005, with something called a leveraged buyout, or an LBO. Now, this is crucial to understand. The Glazer family used borrowed money to buy Manchester United. But here is the absolute catch. That massive debt was then legally loaded onto the club itself. Think about it like this. It's like someone buying a house, but then forcing the house itself to pay the mortgage out of its own rent. It fundamentally changed the club's DNA. And the impact was basically immediate. Overnight, a football club that had proudly operated with zero debt was suddenly saddled with over £500 million in takeover borrowings. $500 million? And honestly, this wasn't even just standard debt. It included these highly toxic payment-in-kind loans. What that means is the punishing interest was paid by taking on even more debt. So it's constantly compounding, acting like this ticking meter, just running endlessly in the background. This specific setup birthed what Morrow calls the extraction engine. It meant cash that absolutely should have gone to the football department was permanently diverted. We're talking three main outflows: paying off that compounding interest, dropping cash on expensive refinancing fees, and eventually paying discretionary dividends directly into the owners' pockets, even as the team's actual performance on the pitch was collapsing. To put this into perspective, we have to look at the opportunity cost. By 2015, so just 10 years after the takeover, over £1 billion had been siphoned off just to service this ownership structure. £1 billion. Think about that for a second. That represents an entire generation of elite players that were never bought, state-of-the-art training facilities that were never upgraded, and a modern recruitment system that was simply never built. It's a massive, silent tax. Now, you might be wondering, if it was really this bad, why didn't the club just collapse right away? Well, for 8 years, they possessed the ultimate financial cloaking device, Sir Alex Ferguson. His sheer, unrepeatable genius as a manager masked this massive structural handicap. He was literally squeezing championship-level performances out of squads that were built under these severe financial constraints, totally hiding the rot until he finally retired in 2013. Which brings us to part 2, this symptoms, specifically the manager carousel. Once Ferguson's cloaking device was finally switched off, the true reality of the club's internal structure was violently exposed. And the resulting chaos is just obvious when you look at a decade of relentless managerial churn. They swung wildly from the chosen heir in Moyes, to a rigid systematist in Van Gaal, to a ruthless pragmatist in Mourinho, to a club legend, and on and on. Every single new manager arrived with a totally different philosophy, demanding different players, and effectively tearing down the previous guy's work every 2 or 3 years. And because they didn't have a stable sporting director or a cohesive recruitment system to anchor them, the club wasted an absolutely staggering £1.43 billion in the transfer market. They were caught in this trap of constantly panic-buying premium players to fit one manager's system, only to discard them at a massive loss when that manager was inevitably fired. Nearly £1.5 billion spent without a single Premier League title to show for it. Part 3. The breaking point. So after 16 years of simmering frustration watching their club's wealth get extracted and the transfer budget squandered, the financial logic of the owners finally collided head-on with the soul of the supporters. The breaking point hit in April 2021. The owners tried to drag the club into a closed European Super League, which was basically the ultimate attempt to eliminate sporting risk just to guarantee financial returns.
Fans completely lost it. 10,000 supporters marched on Old Trafford, invaded the pitch, and actually forced a Premier League match to be postponed. It proved definitively that organized fan power could impose genuine, real-world costs on bad governance.
Part 4. The false cure.
That intense fan pressure eventually forced the Glazers to seek outside investment. In early 2024, they brought in billionaire Sir Jim Ratcliffe and his company INEOS. But this immediately created what Moreau perfectly describes as the two-owner problem. See, INEOS bought operational control to run the football side, but the Glazers retained the economic majority and the ultimate ownership. This means INEOS is highly incentivized to enact really ruthless austerity and cut costs to fix the business, because at the end of the day, the Glazers still hold the bulk of the financial upside. It's a complete structural misalignment.
So fans who were hoping for a lavish spending spree got a harsh dose of reality instead. The club slashed over 250 jobs, cut long-standing staff perks, and jacked general admission tickets up to £97. And yet, jarringly, this relentless penny-pinching in the present was paired with grand, highly publicized PR pitches for a brand-new multi-billion-pound, 100,000-seat megastadium, which obviously raises some serious questions about how a club in this state could actually fund a pipe dream like that.
Part 5. Trapped in the doom loop. Now, let's look at the final prognosis, because this all builds into a mathematical trap that they literally cannot spend their way out of. The enforcer of this trap is PSR, or Profit and Sustainability Rules. In plain English, these are Premier League regulations designed to strictly cap how much money a club is legally permitted to lose over a rolling period. Because United has massive accumulated transfer losses and a hugely bloated wage bill, their ability to actually go out and buy new players today is strictly legally constrained. And that creates this compounding doom loop. The structural debt limits their spending under PSR. The inability to spend naturally weakens the squad. A weaker squad leads to poor results on the pitch, which knocks them right out of lucrative European competitions. And losing that massive European revenue, well, that just tightens their PSR constraints even further, restricting their spending all over again. It's a vicious cycle that just accelerates its own decline. Which brings us to the very sobering reality of 2026. The club is sitting on roughly £1.29 billion in gross debt that desperately needs refinancing, all while floundering in the bottom half of the table. And to make matters even tighter, INEOS itself is reportedly facing its own massive £18 billion corporate debt wall. So that limitless, wealthy cavalry the fans were hoping for, their pockets might actually be severely constrained. So, what would actually fix this? Escaping this mess requires 4 massive structural shifts. First, you have to resolve the divided ownership so incentives actually align. Second, you have to actively pay down that structural debt. Third, you must build a permanent, durable football recruitment architecture. And finally, you have to somehow repair the deeply broken trust with the fan base. Honestly, there are absolutely zero quick fixes here. Jen Malraux totally hit the nail on the head when he wrote, "The theater of dreams was a marketing slogan. The theater of debts is what the slogan was hiding." This entire downfall wasn't a case of a few bad bounces of a football or a couple of unlucky manager hires. It was the totally predictable mathematical output of a financial machine that was built in 2005, switched on, and simply never turned off. And we're going to leave you with this final kind of haunting thought about the broader game of football itself. If the richest, most commercially successful club in the entire world can be completely hollowed out by leverage and financial extraction, is any club out there truly safe? Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer. Keep asking the hard questions, and we'll see you next time.